Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at some big new cards from Night Wanderer. Well, in Japan it's Night Wanderer, obviously over here we are talking all about Shrouded Fable. And frankly, we got a new Ace Spec, we got a new EX, and we've got a whole big old heap of potential here. So let's start off with the EX of Kingdra. And look, we knew Kingdra was coming. Firstly, it literally said it in the press release. But secondly, we have the Kingdra EX Special Illustration Collection, which is one of our Shrouded Fable products. So I can't tell you what that illustration rare looks like for Kingdra, but I can tell you there is a Special Illustration Rare Kingdra coming in a box for us, which is honestly kind of cool. Is the card kind of cool? Yeah, honestly. Yeah, it is. Now, we have a Stage 2 EX, and it's a bit of a problem. And it's weak to Iron Hands. It's weak to Lightning. That is also a little bit of a problem. But this first attack is very, very enticing. Single water energy, and you put 3 water Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. And yes, it just says water Pokemon. Doesn't say basic. Doesn't say water Pokemon without an rule box or water Pokemon without an ability or any of that. Any water Pokemon whatsoever can be put onto your bench using this. There is actually one exception, and it's Palafin. Remember, I showed you in the FAQ for Twilight Masquerade the other day, Palafin has a standing rule where it can only be put into play using Palafin's ability, and it was confirmed in the FAQ that anything that would otherwise put this into play doesn't work. It has to be with Palafin's ability. 0 to Hero is the only way to get this into play, so you wouldn't be able to get Palafin into play using Kingdra, because the FAQ specifically has confirmed it is very literally only 0 to Hero that can put this into play. That is extremely important. But outside of that, you go nuts. And obviously here we're thinking, well, hang on a second. Stage 2 water Pokemon, they are just all potentially available here. Any Stage 2 water Pokemon can just be put into play with this super easily. And yeah, you've got the obvious one here of Baxcalibur, which is already a Stage 2 water Pokemon that sees play, even though we have to evolve it up in the normal way, because it turns out playing as much water energy from your hand during your turn as you like is actually a really good ability. Who'da thunk it? But there's plenty of others which haven't really seen any play up to now that all of a sudden we might look at, well, shall we say, a little bit differently. Remember, Garchomp EX is great, but it's a little bit awkward to get into play. Well, all of a sudden, yeah, that's fine. That works quite nicely. Serena EX that puts damage counts on one of your opponent's Pokemon until it's got 30 HP remaining. Yeah, that'll work quite nicely. The Vanillux that says your opponent's Pokemon with 40 HP or less remaining can't attack. Again, it's a silly tech that doesn't always work, but if I can just get it out the discard essentially for free, why not, frankly? Why not? And of course, any water Pokemon that comes out in the future, it doesn't have to be these ones that are already out. Any that come around in the future are now all of a sudden potential for this attack. It's great. Here's the problem. It is a Stage 2 itself, so you still have to go to effort to get it into play, and it's weak to Iron Hands. Which means Iron Hands, which, remember, it's a future Pokemon. It can boost up its attack quite nicely, right? It's not that difficult. And then when it does, it's taking 3 prizes, because it's a 2 prizer that's weak to Iron Hands. Even against non-Iron Hands, you're still talking about a 2 prize Pokemon that is essentially a Stage 2 setup. You've got to get your Stage 2 out. When your Stage 2 is out, you've got to use your attack for the turn, leave this active for your opponent to hit it, and then you can get it out the way. And when this works, you're cheating. You are getting 3 Stage 2 or Evolved or whatever Pokemon from your discard pile straight onto the bench, and it's brilliant. But when it's not working, That's a huge problem because you're basically either taking too long to get it up or you're giving up 2 prizes to get your Pokemon into play. And I don't know, maybe it's going to be worth it. Maybe you're taking advantage of cards like Counter Catcher, or maybe you're getting your opponent closer to Roxanne, or I don't know, alright? Maybe you can take advantage of this and it's not going to end up being that bad. But this is a phenomenal attack, which is a gigantic liability. There isn't a second attack, incidentally, here. And this is nice and simple. 2 colorless energy, 50 damage, plus 50 for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. Obviously, it becomes a billion times better with Baxcalibur. But as I've said, the first attack lets you play Baxcalibur. I don't think it's a reason to play Kingdra. You play it for the first attack. It's interesting. I'm giving it between 3 and 4 Wassies. Because the problem here is, it is a great attack. I don't think there's any argument about it being a great attack. But the fact that you have to evolve up into a stage 2 and then leave this 2 prizer that's weak to Iron Hands in the active to take a hit, not loving that. But we have a new Ace Spec as well as a new EX, and this new Ace Spec has a bunch of potential. Incidentally, remember we've already seen Neutral Center and Pokevital A? So this is the 3rd and final Ace Spec from this Japanese set, and that's Night Wanderer, and we've already had it confirmed that we are not getting more than 3 in Shrouded Fable. We are getting 3, that is confirmed. So this is the final one. Don't expect any new Ace Specs for a little while until the next Japanese set comes around. This is it. It's the one we've been waiting for. Was it worth the wait? Kind of. It's called Dangerous Laser, and it reads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned and confused. Yakido is burn, Conran is confusion. Both of them happen when you play this card. And I am a little bit in 2 minds here, because on the one hand, this just reminds me of Hypnotoxic Laser. This is the rebirth of Hypnotoxic Laser. Now, it's not exactly the same as Hypnotoxic Laser, don't get me wrong. Hypnotoxic Laser was automatic poison, sleep on a coin flip, but more importantly, it was not an Ace Spec, so it wasn't limited. This is automatic burn, automatic confusion, but actually it's not that much better than Hypnotoxic Laser. Now, essentially, burn is arguably better than poison because you take 2 damage counters initially rather than 1. So after 1 turn, burn is better than poison. The thing is, burn, if you flip heads, you get out of it, poison carries on. And poison's got stuff like Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, for instance, and Perilous Jungle that will add to the poison, whereas burn doesn't have easy cards to play like that. So if you're just looking at the damage during the first Pokemon checkup, this is actually better than Hypnotoxic Laser, but the fact that you can flip heads out of burn and the fact that poison has all that stuff to boost it up quite nicely means that most of the time I'd still rather have poison. As for confusion versus sleep, it's still a coin flip to get around. But the thing is, with sleep, I flip the coin at the start of my turn. And then I know if I need to get out the active or not. Confusion, I flip when I attack. So the thing is, with confusion, you always have to try and get around it. Whereas sleep, half the time you're going to wake up and you know you don't need to do anything. And confusion, of course, if you flip tails, you take the damage. So, yeah. But of course, you can retreat out of confusion in a way that you can't retreat out of sleep. So, yeah, it's a bit of a muchness. The thing is, it's an Ace Spec. Now, interestingly enough, it is the only one of the 3 from this set that doesn't have the text saying it can't be recovered from the discard pile, which means you can recover it with something like a Regieleki, for instance, if you so wish. So we might see some decks that basically sit there with something like Regieleki or anything else that can recover item cards, there are a few of them around, and basically just use this every single turn, and then you'll just run out of ways around it. Like, sooner or later, if your opponent is confusing you every single turn, you'll be able to retreat sometimes, you'll be able to switch out sometimes, there'll be times you get around it. But at some point, you will then have to just accept it and start flipping for confusion. Maybe that's where this actually becomes quite nice. It still feels like, as an Ace Spec though, it's a little bit underpowered. I love the idea of being able to loop this and just using this every single turn, but you need something specific like Regieleki sitting there reusing it in order to actually do that, which is obviously not ideal. But am I really going to be playing this over something like Prime Catcher? Is it going to give me as much of a bonus in my games as that? I'm not sure it's going to. I like that we've got it, and I think it's a good card, but when we look at this compared to Hypnotoxic Laser, and I was around for the whole Hypnotoxic Laser format. I was playing heavily when that came out. I was still playing heavily when it rotated again. I was here for the whole Hypnotoxic Laser format, and this does not, it's the second we saw that card, everyone was like, yeah, that's a massive problem. And it was, incidentally, a massive problem. Here, it's burn, so you're not really putting up the extra damage. You can flip out of burn, you can retreat out of confusion, and it's just, I don't think it's necessarily worse than Hypnotoxic Laser, because burn initially does more damage and confusion. You don't have that time like you do with sleep, where you know at the beginning of the turn you're out of it. But I'd definitely rather have poison than I would burn. And sleep can stick for turn after turn after turn and just leave your opponent doing nothing and not even able to retreat. So, I don't know. I'm giving this again between 3 and 4 Wassies. When I give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. I don't think it's a bad Ace Spec. But I also don't think it's some kind of game-changing card. And I think the only decks that are really going to be loving this are ones that can recover item cards to loop it. But even then, there's an argument that maybe just loop Prime Catcher and just annoy your opponent in that way. For now, I want to know what you think about these cards, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Dojo, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourself till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.